I felt goosebumps on my skin as I climbed the seemingly endless flight of stairs. I was cursing myself for this stupid idea. There were definitely better ways to surprise my girlfriend, but it was her birthday and she did adore horror movies. That's why I decided to prepare a surprise candlelight dinner in a creepy, abandoned hospital at night. As soon as I stepped onto the 3rd floor, the door closed behind me with a bang. And that should have been my first warning to give up on this ridiculous idea because things were about to get real crazy. Before I continue, please like and subscribe to protect yourself from getting into crazy situations. I pushed the door to check if I was locked in, but thankfully I wasn't. With shaking hands, I messaged Taylor. "Hey babe, I'm waiting." Winky face. I suddenly panicked. Damn it, no! I'd sent it to my boyfriend, Oliver, instead. I immediately unsent it and sent Taylor another message. Hopefully Oliver hadn't seen it. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. I called out, "Babe? Taylor? Is anyone here?" Just then, someone tapped on my shoulder, and I almost passed out. I heard laughter. "Taylor?" I yelled. "Babe, don't do that. You nearly scared me to death." She answered, "And who told you about this venue?" I told her that I thought she'd love it, but then she caressed my cheek and said, "I do, but you don't." My heart fluttered. My girlfriend was such a stud. Just as we sat down to eat, we heard a blood-curdling scream. Taylor got up and dashed out of the room to check it out, and I followed. We went into a room at the end of the hall, and we saw a guy looking out the window. Thinking it was a ghost, I hid behind Taylor. She called to him. Who are you? What do you want?" The guy replied, "My phone. I dropped my phone. Damn it." I gasped. His voice sounded familiar. Oh no, it couldn't be. But then he turned, and I almost wanted to jump out of the window myself. It was Oliver. I asked, "What are you doing here?" He replied, "You told me to come." The blood drained from my face as Taylor turned to me. Thankfully, everyone was suddenly distracted when Oliver said, "We have one little problem, guys. We're stuck." Taylor shouted, "What do you mean we're stuck?" Panicking, I ran outside to check the door, but it wouldn't open this time. I pushed even harder, but it wouldn't budge. The elevator wasn't working anymore, and the other fire exit door was locked as well. When I got back, Oliver and Taylor were staring at each other. I swear the tension between them was so strong, I could feel it in the air. And at that moment, I realized that my worst nightmare had come true. I was stuck in the creepiest place possible with my girlfriend and boyfriend. I yelled, "We have to get out of here." Taylor said, "The door opened easily when I came in. Someone must have locked it accidentally." Oliver snapped back, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Taylor replied, "I don't know. You tell me." Geez, I had to do something before they killed each other. I pulled Oliver into a corner and explained, "Babe, that's Taylor. She's my cousin. She doesn't know that I have a boyfriend, so be cool. You're my other cousin. Get it?" He took out a piece of paper and pushed it into my pocket, saying, "Read it later, babe." I then pulled Taylor into another room. She said, "Ooh, this is hot, babe," and pushed me against the wall to kiss me. I said, "Babe, that's Oliver. He's my cousin, and he's staying with us at the moment. I don't know why he turned up here. He doesn't know that I'm into girls, so be cool. You're my other cousin. Get it?" She replied, "Okay, whatever. Don't know why, but something about that guy is super familiar." I quickly said, "I'm sure you don't know him. He's not from around here. Let's go." We started looking around to see if we could find a way out. Taylor's phone was in her bag, which was on her motorcycle outside, and Oliver had dropped his, so our only chance was my phone. I tried dialing 911, but of course, there was no signal. They were both holding onto my shirt as I led the way back to the room where Taylor and I had been on our date. Just then, Taylor picked up something from the floor. It was the little love note that Oliver had slipped into my pocket. She looked at me and then at Oliver and said, "Kendra, who gave this to you?" Before I could reply, Oliver jumped in and said, "What's it to you, huh? But out of her personal business, will you?" Taylor looked furious, and I did the only thing that I could think of and said it wasn't mine. "You know I think these notes are stupid." Then I took it from her and tossed it away. I turned to the window and started screaming for help, but no one seemed to be in the area. Taylor suggested we gather the bed sheets, tie them together to make a rope, and use it to climb down from the window. But Oliver immediately rejected her idea. "How are you so dumb? It's too risky. We're on the 3rd freaking floor. Don't you girls have any hairpins? I could try opening the lock with one." Taylor turned to him. No, Nancy Drew, we don't. And I don't think that would help anyway. My idea is much better. As they continued to argue, I climbed up on a stool, hoping to get some phone signal. We needed to get out of here tonight before they found out I was dating both of them. Suddenly, I lost my balance and slipped. Luckily, I landed in Oliver's arms. He looked so handsome, and his strong arms always made me feel safe. He said, "Easy there, babe." He was about to lean in for a kiss when we heard Taylor clear her throat. She sarcastically said, "How I wish I had a sweet cousin like him," before walking away. She looked angry and jealous. As I ran after her, I tripped over something and fell forward and straight into her. She cried as she lost her balance and we both fell to the floor. Her body felt so soft and she smelled really good. Our lips were so close as I stared at her pretty face. She was about to reach for my lips to kiss me when we saw Oliver glaring down at us. He said, "We shouldn't be messing around, girls. Get up and move." Ugh, I found them both so attractive in different ways. It was so confusing. Maybe this was my chance to finally decide between them. Suddenly, Oliver came up to me and said, "I think your cousin has a crush on me. She keeps checking me out." I wanted to laugh, but then Taylor said the same thing about him. They thought jealousy was interest. For some reason, that pissed me off. Clearly, it was only me anyone liked. It was past midnight already, and Oliver suggested we wait until morning to find help. I thought it was a great idea. The less we talked, the less likely it was that they'd find out my little secret. But Taylor seemed agitated. I started dusting a bed off when Taylor said she didn't want to sleep in a room with a boy. She said, "I just wanted to have a girly time with Kendra tonight. We have lots of catching up to do." Oliver said, "Fine, I'll sleep in the next room then." In bed, Taylor hugged me from behind and said, "Well, I can't complain. I like how it's turning out." But I couldn't help worrying about Oliver. He only had one candle with him. Moments later, I noticed a blood stain on the bed and started freaking out. My period had started. Taylor said she had me covered and gave me a tampon. My girl was a lifesaver. I gave her a quick kiss. When I came back, she hugged me again. But Oliver being alone kept bothering me. I suggested that we move to his room. I said, "He's kind of a wimp. He might be scared." Taylor answered, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Oliver is my cousin. He's my responsibility. We have to stick together." Oliver slept on a couch across the room and Taylor and I on the bed. Taylor had already fallen asleep, while I kept imagining shadows and whatnot dancing around the room. What if the ghost of a dead patient suddenly lay down beside me? I caught Oliver's attention and signaled him to sleep on my other side. He slid under the cover with me. My heartbeat started to race when I felt his hand holding mine. It felt weird to be sandwiched between them, but for some reason, it felt exciting. Suddenly, a loud rustling noise in the hallway made us all jump to our feet. Oliver asked, "What was that?" Taylor answered him, "I don't know. Why don't you check it out since you're the guy here?" Using a candle, Taylor and I followed Oliver out of the room. We saw a lot of emergency things scattered on the floor. I screamed when a huge rat suddenly ran out in front of us. When I turned to them, I almost laughed when I saw them hugging each other tightly in fear. They took like 10 steps apart when they realized that it wasn't me they were hugging. Oliver said, "Sorry about that. I thought you were my cousin." Taylor answered, It's not a big deal." We couldn't fall back asleep after that and just sat in silence. Man, this was getting uncomfortable. I spotted an empty bottle in the corner. I shouted, "Let's play truth or dare." We sat down on the floor and Oliver spun the bottle. It landed on me. Oliver smirked and said, "Okay, Kendra, I dare you to kiss Taylor." I looked at him in shock. Was this some kind of test? I laughed and said, "That's gross, Oliver. She's my cousin." Taylor looked pissed when I said that. She said, "Oh, well, I guess the only two people who aren't cousins here are me and Oliver." And she suddenly crawled over to him, pulled him towards her by the collar, and kissed him. Oliver looked really surprised and turned red. I was so angry, but it's not like I could say anything. Thankfully, it was morning now, and everything had started to brighten up. We looked like a bunch of zombies. I checked my phone and was horrified to see that my battery had totally drained. We followed Taylor to the laboratory room and saw some chemicals spilled on the floor. Oliver slipped, but before falling, Taylor was able to catch him. She told him, "Watch your step, dude." Oliver looked up at her. and seeing how they were staring into each other's eyes made me feel like I had been stabbed through the chest. I was jealous, but I didn't know of who. I pushed them apart and said, "Come on, let's get to work. I don't want to be stuck here forever." We found some jars and test tubes with scary-looking things inside. Taylor explained what they were with confidence, and Oliver looked oh so fascinated. He said, "Wow, that sounds so cool." Taylor replied, "My dad's a surgeon. That's why I know these things." Oliver just stared at her, and Taylor looked like she was enjoying it. Suddenly, Taylor said, "I'm so cold." I started taking off my jacket, but she said she didn't want me to catch a cold, so she went to our room and got into bed. Oliver went in after her and put his jacket around her shoulders. Taylor must have thought it was me because she said, "I love you, babe." But Oliver just turned red, and when Taylor saw who it was, she blushed too. Ugh, it was so annoying. I had to get their attention back. I walked away and tripped on purpose. Acting like I had a sprain, I shouted for help, but no one came. I was furious. I marched back to the laboratory room and my jaw dropped in horror at what I saw. My boyfriend and girlfriend were kissing. I screamed, "What the hell? I hate you both." Both of them looked so shocked as they stepped away from each other. Taylor said, "What did you say, babe?" I told her Oliver was mine. Oliver asked, "Did you just call her babe too?" I answered, "Yes, because she's my girlfriend. She's mine." All of a sudden, I realized what I'd done, but it was too late because they both looked furious. Now what? I immediately walked out and looked for a corner to cry in. A few hours had passed and my stomach growled. I realized that we hadn't eaten for more than 12 hours. I found them in our room eating the leftovers from last night. My anger flared. Oliver feeding Taylor with his own hands. The freaking traitors. They were officially together now? I complained that no one had even asked me for food, and Oliver said, "But I thought you were on a diet." Taylor repeated him, "Yeah, I thought you were on a diet." I told her to stay out of this, and she replied, "Or what? You'll cheat on me?" For a minute, the whole room was absolutely silent, but the tension was killing me. I chose to walk away again, or I'd go crazy. Nighttime came again, and I was so pissed. I spent another hour screaming for help, even though I knew it was useless. When it was time to sleep, I went to join them, wondering what the sleeping arrangement would be tonight. I'd probably be the one on the couch now. I noticed that Taylor was missing. I asked Oliver where she was, and he told me that he had been looking for her too. Oliver tried to hold my hand as we checked each room, but I smacked it away. How dare he? He had kissed my girlfriend, and it was unforgivable. He then told me that he didn't trust Taylor. "I think she already escaped and left us here. We should get out already." I was annoyed. How could he think about Taylor like that? I said, "You seemed to find her just fine when you were kissing her." Just then, he looked out the window and yelled, "See? I told you." He showed me a rope made of bed sheets hanging from the window. He said we could try going down that way too, but I hesitated because I saw her motorcycle still parked outside. I said, that looks like a really steep drop. Let's try to find another way?" My stomach growled again. Oliver grabbed my hand and pulled me to the back of the nurse's station. I was surprised when he took out some snacks and water bottles from a drawer. He said, "If you want to stay here, it's fine. We have everything we need." I said, "Of course I don't want to stay here. And where did this food come from?" Oliver said, "I don't know, babe. It was just here. I thought you probably brought it for your date. And look how she's left you now." We lay down to sleep. Just as I had dozed off, I woke up in shock. I'd heard a phone ring. Was I imagining stuff? Something just wasn't right. I tried to open the huge door at the end of the hallway again, and unexpectedly, it opened this time. I went inside and heard another ring, then a moan. I followed the sound and was shocked to see Taylor tied up to a surgical bed, and next to her was a phone. I immediately ran up to her to untie her and grab the phone. We had to call for help. She revealed, "That creep planned all of this. I remembered how I knew him. I used to date his sister, and he tried hitting on me back then. He found out I was going out with you. He wanted to get rid of me by trapping me in here." What? Panicking, I looked around and saw a fire extinguisher under the sink and used it to hit the metal lock bar on the fire exit door. We tried and tried until it opened. Finally! While Taylor and I were running down the stairs, Oliver screamed from the top, "Bring her back to me, you stupid witch." He started to run after us, but in a panic, Taylor suddenly tripped. I helped her get up, but Oliver was able to catch up and grabbed me by my shirt. He yelled, "She never even noticed me and used to make fun of me with my sister, and now she's trying to steal my girlfriend. When you texted me by mistake, you gave me the perfect chance to set things straight. You're mine, Kendra. You can't be hers." He was about to pull me back, shaking Taylor off. Then suddenly, we heard sirens. The police had come. Oliver looked horrified, and then he was off. He ran down the stairs and out of the door. For a minute, I was scared he'd gotten away. But just then, 2 policemen came into sight, and they grabbed him. We ran downstairs and told them everything. To say he'll be behind bars for a long time is an understatement. My parents would be worried sick, so Taylor drove me home next. Before going inside, I invited her to spend the night with me. But to my surprise, she shook her head and said, "I really loved you, Kendra, but I need time to think about us." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "What do you mean? Are you breaking up with me?" But Taylor just left. Over the following weeks, I realized how unfair I had been to Taylor. She had always loved me and been strong for me, and all I had done was cheat on her. Now, she didn't even want to talk to me. Until one day, when the doorbell rang. When I went to check, someone stood at the back door with a huge bouquet of flowers. For a minute, I was terrified. Was Oliver somehow back? But then, the person holding the flowers peeked at me from behind them. "Taylor, I'm so sorry. I was crazy, and I just got carried away, but I love you, Kay. Even after everything, I love you." "I love you too."
I stared down at the box of crayons. Why did these kids keep tearing the wrappers off? I couldn't read the names now.
Hey, Dumbo, why's your grass purple? Are you an alien from planet Stupid? It's purple because I've got an imagination.
As I stormed off to the teacher to ask for a new box of crayons, I suddenly fell face forward. I tripped over a skipping rope I hadn't seen. Hi, I'm Anna. And no, my grass is actually purple because I'm colorblind. Before I continue, click on like and subscribe. Otherwise, you'll stop seeing your favorite color. Things weren't too bad when I was little, but my condition really started affecting my life in high school. See, imagine your mom's not dressing you anymore, and you want to look good, but if you're colorblind, you can end up doing some really embarrassing stuff. I went to school one day wearing what I thought was a very cute blue shirt, but Alexa, the class bully, screamed that I looked like a toad in the ugly green shirt. The other day, I ended up wearing mismatched stockings, and while everyone was busy laughing, I said it was a bold-fashioned choice. So I usually just ended up sticking to black and white, which is cool if you're like 50. One day, as soon as I walked into school, one of the guys shouted, "Oh my god, are you okay? Your eyes are bleeding."
What? I didn't feel anything.
Yeah, really funny. Ha ha, weirdo. But apparently, it wasn't a joke, because pretty soon, a crowd had huddled around me, looking closely at my eyes.
Ha! She's not bleeding, she's just blind. What do you do when you're blind? You put red lip liner on your eyes and black on your lips.
Oh my god, had I really? As I tried to get out of there to wash my face, Alexa and her rat pack just pushed me back and started taking pictures. Just then, someone pushed their way through, and I turned to see the school's football captain and the most handsome guy on the planet, Kevin. "Hey, cut it out! You guys are the worst!" Then he suddenly pulled me away from Alexa and her minions and took me to a quiet corner. What he did next left me speechless. He took out some tissue paper and wiped my tears. And of course, the horrendous lip liner too. Hope you're okay. You know why they act that way, right? They're jealous because you're so beautiful. I gasped. Had Kevin just called me beautiful? But before I could even wrap my head around it, he was gone. The next day at lunch, I was sitting by myself, as usual. I could see the guys in class were always looking over at me, but while Alexa and her gang were around, they wouldn't dare to come and sit next to me. The cowards. But just then, Kevin came by and asked if he could join me. And before I knew what was happening, the two of us were hanging out all the time. He was pretty popular and always had a bunch of friends around, but he never made me feel left out. Of course, this didn't sit well with Alexa. She was part of the cheerleading squad, so she would always be there at every practice match, and she just wouldn't stop flirting with him.
Hey! Can't wait for the out-of-town game next week. An overnight trip will be so fun. Why don't you come to my room after the game? We'll definitely be having a party.
Kevin nodded and she smirked at me and walked away. I felt furious. She's really pretty, isn't she? I think she's into me. Maybe I should ask her out. I felt my heart sink right down to my toes. Yeah, whatever, if you want to. Just as I was about to walk away, he grabbed my hand. Or I could ask you out, 'cause you're way prettier, and you have my heart.
Someone bring me back to planet Earth! I was over the moon! I was dating
fucking dream boy Kevin! One day while we were strolling through the park, I said to Kevin that it was pretty cool we were both from African-American families. He started laughing. Anna, what are you talking about? I'm black. You're totally white. This was news to me. I was pretty sure he was pulling my leg. When I went home that day, I walked straight into one of Mom and Dad's screaming matches. Dad could never hold a job and was always getting into trouble. Hey, guys, cut it out for a sec. Tell me something. Are we black or white? Mom and Dad both stared at me blankly for a second. Dad said, "Why don't you answer her stupid questions and leave me alone?" Mom said, "Of course we're white, Anna. And no, I'm not done with you. Your dad has really crossed the line. He stole money from my own aunt, and everyone in the family knows." Jeez, he'd really done it this time. I don't know how Mom puts up with him. I just couldn't be around them, so I grabbed my keys and rushed out of the house. As I turned around, I saw a red signal and rushed past it. Blaring in the distance was a truck. It kept flicking its lights, and I pushed on the brakes as hard as I could. Oh no! As I slowly opened my eyes, I saw the two of them arguing again. My dad said, "Why do you even let her drive? Now I'll have to pay this ridiculous hospital bill. Why don't you go steal some more money?" Then I said, "Orange?" "What?" Mom asked. "I'm problem cat pink." "Oh God, and now she's blabbering," my dad said. Why couldn't I speak properly? What was happening? The doctor explained that because I'd had some head trauma, I was having difficulty putting words together. But I just had to keep trying, and it would be fine. The doctor said it's minor, but I lobster SpongeBob so much. Give us some time, dear. You'll be fine, Mom said. The day I got home from the hospital, Kevin came over to see me. "So, you know how much I love you, right? Well, I want to show you how serious I am about you. I want you to meet my parents." What? Meet Kevin's parents? That's the kind of seriousness every girl is looking for. Oh, Moon, go! Ink so hope. What? Kevin asked. I took out my notebook and wrote. The doctor said I won't be able to put words together properly for some time, and it's worse when I'm excited or anxious. Maybe we should do this later? You'll be fine when you're with me. Don't worry, Kevin assured me. Kevin's smile made all the difference in the world. I was still anxious, though, because there were his parents. And from what he told me, they seemed a little hoity-toity. The next day at their house, I was so nervous. Hello, lovely house. I was trying to be as respectful as possible to his parents while keeping my sentences really short. But then I tried complimenting the food, and I wished I'd kept my mouth shut. Wow, the good food dog, eggplant, the Scrabble. Wait, no, the stapler, stone, Jello. No. Oh, dear God. Then Kevin saved me and said, "You mean you really like the food? Well, thanks, Anna. That's very sweet of you." I just smiled meekly at his parents. No amount of covering up from Kevin was going to make them like me now, and I was right. This is the only girl you could find. She's crazy. This is exactly why we want you to meet Sabrina. She's your dad's business partner's daughter, and she is extremely well-behaved. I could hear Kevin's mom's voice from the kitchen. But, well, there was nothing I could do about it. Over the next week, I noticed my sentences were improving, but Kevin wasn't around for me to tell him. He had the flu, so he wanted to stay in. Or so I thought. One day, I got a text from him that left me completely shook. "Dear Anna, as much as I adore you, I have to end this relationship. My parents really want me to date Sabrina, and they won't have it any other way. Please forgive me. I hope we can still be friends." What? Was this for real? The guy who claimed to love me was leaving me because I wasn't good enough for his parents? I felt beyond furious and blocked his number. He didn't even have the decency to say all this to my face, and he thought we could be friends? I spent the whole weekend crying over sad movies with tubs of ice cream. I didn't want to go to school and ever see him again. The next day, while I was putting stuff in my locker, that jerk walked up to me. "Hey, I've been trying to get in touch." I slammed the locker door and turned away. "I don't want to hear it, Kevin. Leave me alone." And here I was at lunch again, back to sitting by myself. And I got a C on my math test because I hadn't studied at all. Suddenly, someone snatched the test paper out of my hands.
Not so smart now, are we? What's it like being stupid and blind?
"Alexa, have you ever gotten an A in anything?" "I'll take that, thanks." Colin, this guy from my class, snatched the paper out of a furious Alexa's hand and came and sat next to me. He'd never spoken to me before. "Hey, you ever need help with math, let me know. I'd be happy to tutor you," Colin said. I was just about to say no thanks when I saw Kevin looking over at us from the corner of my eye. I was hurt and angry, and I wanted him to eat his heart out right now. Yeah, I think I could really use the help. Say we meet here every day during recess? The next few days, I started hanging out with Colin all the time. We went to the school's football game, and I saw Kevin look at us as we walked up to the bleachers. I immediately took Colin's hand and smiled at him. One evening, Colin came to my place to work on a school project. As we laughed and worked together, I couldn't help thinking he was really cute. When he was leaving, I walked him out, and he turned to me on the porch. "Hey, it's been a week since we started hanging out, but it feels like I've known you a really long time." Then he took my hand and pulled me close. Uh-oh. What was happening? I don't know if you know this, but You've got the most gorgeous green eyes. What a smooth talker. As he was leaning in to kiss me, I moved closer too. And, Anna, what are you doing here? I demanded. I felt so angry looking at Kevin. I'm so sorry, Anna. I know why you're mad and I can explain. And what's this loser doing here? Kevin asked. He is not a loser. He really cares about me, unlike you. I could feel Colin getting all worked up beside me. Kevin said, just listen, okay? I overheard my parents today talking about how they texted you from my phone. It wasn't me, Anna. I would never do that. For a minute, I was speechless. My heart was just melting looking at his face. But then there was Colin, still holding on to me. Colin said, you know we have something special, Anna. Are you really going to choose him over me? I said, no, but it really wasn't his fault either, you know? This is so confusing. Kevin said, I'm willing to show you how much you mean to me. Maybe this guy can do the same, if he's up for it. Oh, I'm up for it. There's no way she's choosing the guy who didn't even check why she left him. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but well, then let the dating games begin. As I was getting ready the next evening, I was pretty surprised that the dress Colin had sent me looked like Cinderella's. But then he turned up in an actual carriage, looking like Prince Charming. I felt like I was in a fairy tale. After you, my lady, Colin said. This place is beautiful, Colin. Oh, look! Everyone here is dressed up as a character, I said. Yes, but none of them look as beautiful as you. Colin was such a sweetheart. I had the most amazing night at this club, dancing away my worries. These are for you, my lady, Colin said. Colin was giving me yellow roses? You want to friend zone me after this amazing night? No, cutie, they're red. You're just seeing them as yellow. Friend zone you? I can never. It was Kevin's turn next, and he turned up in a limo and whisked me away to my favorite boy band's concert. And we had front row tickets and backstage passes. As I got selfies with the band, I couldn't believe he had done this for me. My life had turned upside down in a week. The next few days were just a whirlwind of candlelit dinners, romantic moonlit walks, picnics in the park, and boat rides on the lake. And I was being showered with the most amazing gifts every day. If I kept eating chocolate truffles at this rate, I wouldn't be able to fit in any of the pretty dresses I was getting. I was getting more and more confused, too. Both the boys were so sweet, and they really seemed to care about me. How was I ever gonna decide? Eventually, it was my birthday, and I got a text from Kevin at midnight sharp. Happy birthday to the love of my life. Just then, I heard someone throw a pebble at my window. It was Colin. I couldn't wait till tomorrow to give you your present. Happy birthday, sweetheart, Colin said. I gasped when I saw the Apple Watch. I've been trying to make my parents get this for me since forever. How did you know I wanted this? I asked. I'm pretty sure you told me, babe. To my disappointment, Kevin didn't even come and see me the next morning. Of course, Colin was more than happy to have me all to himself on my birthday. We had a great time at the movies, and later, he cooked me dinner at his place. Looking at his face in the moonlight, my heart melted a little. Maybe he was the better guy. He left the table to get dessert, and suddenly his phone beeped. I just happened to glance at it, and suddenly my gaze froze. Why did he have a text from my dad? I opened it, and it said, Told you she'll love the present. Make sure she makes up her mind about you before that boy is back. Colin came back and stopped short when he saw his phone in my hand. What's all this, Colin? I asked angrily. He slowly sat down and wouldn't even look at me as he said he had to tell me something. Your dad has been paying me to keep you distracted from any thoughts of Kevin. What I didn't know was that I would actually fall in love with you. I'm so sorry, but please know my feelings for you are real. I was shocked and speechless. I felt disgusted by Dad, and I couldn't believe Colin had agreed to trick me like that. I just threw my napkin down and left. As soon as I got back home, I went straight to the lounge where my parents were watching TV. I said, Mom, you know what this guy did? He paid Colin to play with my feelings and keep my mind off of Kevin. I started crying as I told Mom the whole story. I had never seen her this furious. Mom screamed at Dad. Why would you do such a thing? Oh, jeez. Don't make such a big deal of it. I only did it because Kevin's parents were paying me to keep her away from their son. I knew she would never listen to me if I talked to her, so I thought Colin would be a good distraction. What's the problem? I picked a nice guy for her, and I could use the money to pay off our debts. Mom got up and said, Not our debts, your debts. Even this house is mine because I pay for the rent. I've had enough. Get out, now. Finally, go Mom. Dad was furious and left. I felt completely betrayed by Colin, and Kevin had just disappeared. I was done with these stupid boys playing with my feelings. I spent the next few days sulking in my room and watching videos on my Story Animated. I came across one where the girl's dad had been paying her boyfriend to spy on her for years. Well, that was believable. Kevin showed up the next morning. I told him I was done with everyone. He said he'd had to go somewhere urgently, and he couldn't get a flight out sooner because of bad weather. I said, What's so urgent? You had to go to Rome to eat pizza? Your private jet wasn't available? Kevin said, Listen, let me make it up to you. Just give me one chance. That's all I'm asking. Reluctantly, I agreed. He blindfolded me and drove me somewhere, refusing to tell me anything. He helped me out of the car, and I could feel the sea breeze on my face. Kevin, what's the big secret? I've seen the sea 1,000,000,000 times. Not like this. Just don't open your eyes till I tell you. The blindfold came off, and I felt him placing glasses on my nose. Now, I opened my eyes, and I gasped. I was seeing colors properly for the first time. I didn't know the sea was that shade of blue. I couldn't get over the sky. And the trees, the sand? Kevin was laughing and recording my reaction. I started crying. I'd been living in a faded world, and it was so much more beautiful and brighter than I could have ever thought possible. Kevin wrapped me in one of his bear hugs. God, I miss these hugs. He said he'd flown over to a place in Europe where a company was making these glasses. They were still in the testing phase, but he wanted to give me the perfect gift. It was at that moment that I knew it was always Kevin, and for the first time, I could really see how beautiful and deep his green eyes were. Kiss me, Kevin. I want you to kiss me. We shared the most magical kiss, and I had fireworks going off in my head of every color.